The Sonoran desert air was hot and thick, a relentless dry heat that seemed to crack the very rocks. Dust devils spun across the alkali flats, brief, furious gestures against the vast, empty sky. The only shade was found in the deep, narrow folds of the Serpent's Tooth Canyon, a place rumored to be haunted by ancient spirits. The sun was directly overhead, beating down on the solitary rider. Josiah Jake Harper, a vaquero with the rugged, quiet demeanor of a man who preferred the company of horses to men, rode his dusty black Mustang Gamble into the canyon. His clothing, a worn leather vest, high-cuffed boots and a wide-brimmed hat, was a uniform of isolation. He carried a heavy Colt .45 on his hip and a well-used Winchester in the scabbard. He sought refuge and water, not trouble, but in this land, trouble often found the solitary traveler. As he moved deeper into the canyon, the oppressive silence grew heavier, punctuated only by the jingle of his spurs and the weary creak of his saddle. Then the rhythmic sound of his horse's hooves stopped echoing. A feeling of dread, cold and sharp, crawled up his spine. The silence was too perfect. Jake slowly pulled Gamble to a halt. He felt the weight of unseen eyes on him. "Show yourselves, partners," he called out, his voice a dry, gravelly sound that seemed tiny against the immense rock walls. "I'm just passing through. No quarrel here." He kept his hands visible near the reins, avoiding the classic duelist's twitch toward his gun. The answer came not in words, but in motion. From the shadows of every jagged outcropping, from the mouth of every small cave, Apache warriors appeared. They were numerous, easily 20 men, armed with bows, spears, and a few scavenged rifles. They moved with absolute silence, surrounding Jake and Gamble in a tight, unyielding circle. Their faces were painted in stark, intimidating patterns of red and black. Then the final, most chilling figure stepped forward. A man of immense stature, a giant easily 7 feet tall, his bare chest scarred with ritualistic cuts, his eyes burning with ancient rage. This was Mountain Hand, the feared war chief. He carried not a rifle, but a massive polished war club carved from obsidian, a symbol of primal close-quarters combat. Mountain Hand approached, his heavy leather leggings making a soft, susurrus sound on the dust. He stopped directly in front of Jake, his shadow swallowing the Vaquero. "You ride into the heart of the Pi territory, white man. You carry the smell of the railroad syndicate on your leather. You seek the water we need. Why do you trespass on the land you sold to the Iron Horse?" His voice was a deep, powerful rumble. Jake stared up at the giant chief, feeling the cold weight of the surrounding silence. The tribe believed he was an agent for the railroad, a betrayal that meant immediate death. "I ain't no railroad man, chief," Jake insisted, his gaze locked on the war club. "I only carried a message once. I rode away from them years ago. But I accept your judgment. I am Jake Harper, and I submit to your code." Mountain Hand raised his war club high, the polished obsidian reflecting the sliver of sunlight, and brought it down in a powerful arc, not at Jake, but striking the ground with a terrifying crack, signaling the true start of the ritual. The crack of the obsidian war club splitting the earth sent a tremor through the canyon floor. The sound was a loud, sharp signal. Immediately, the warriors began a low, rhythmic chant, stamping their feet, creating a powerful, hypnotic vibration. Mountain Hand lowered the club, his eyes intensely focused on Jake. "You know the name of this place, Vaquero, the Canyon of the Silent Truth. The earth here hears only honesty," Mountain Hand said, his voice dropping to a low growl. "The railroad's men ride north, seeking the Ghost Spring, the water that sustains my people. They carry a map that only a white man with our trust could have drawn. You will tell us the truth of your involvement with the Iron Horse, or the ritual will claim your life." Jake slowly dismounted, raising his hands in surrender. "I worked for the territorial governor, Chief, not the railroad directly. I was a scout. I found the quickest, safest route for the rails, away from the sacred grounds. But I was betrayed. They edited my map, cutting right through your territory to save a few days' work." He pointed to a small, faded scar above his left eye. "That's the thanks I got when I refused to sign their final false documents. They left me for dead." The chief walked the perimeter of the circle, examining Jake's horse, his gear, and his weapons. He took Jake's Colt 45 and tossed it to a warrior, who immediately secured it. "The white man always blames the paper, not the pen. You drew the lines. Now you will face the trial of the scar." Mountain Hand pointed toward a shallow, sun-baked pool of water, a sacred but dwindling source. "You will stand on that rock in the center of the water. For 1 full hour you will endure the heat of the sun and the spiritual gaze of the pie. You will not flinch, you will not move. If your spirit is true, the heat will not consume you. If you flinch, the ritual demands you forfeit your life." It was a test of endurance and resolve, a physical manifestation of his inner truth. Jake walked to the rock, the ground feeling soft and hot beneath his boots. He stepped onto the rock, forcing himself into a stance of absolute stillness. The sun immediately began its brutal, dehydrating assault. The rhythmic chanting of the warriors intensified, becoming a dizzying, suffocating wave of sound that pressed in on him. He felt the sweat instantly soak his shirt. After what felt like a lifetime, Jake's vision began to swim. He held his stance, his muscles screaming. He heard a noise that was not part of the ritual, a faint, sharp whip crack of a rifle in the distance. It was the sound of a modern Winchester, a hunting rifle, too distinct to be a mistake. The whip-crack sound was immediately followed by a high-pitched metallic ping as a bullet struck the canyon wall near the entrance. The chanting stopped instantly. Mountain Hand roared a command in Apache. "Bounty hunters, they track the trail dust. They come for the railroad's reward and blood. The trial is suspended, Vaquero. The external enemy is here. Do you fight with us, or do you die alone?" The sudden threat of the bounty hunters, a second external peril, instantly fractured the ritual circle. Mountain Hand moved with the speed of a startled cougar, directing his warriors into defensive positions along the canyon walls. The threat was tangible and immediate. The bounty hunters wouldn't care about sacred ground. They only saw the reward on the chief and any associate. Jake, despite his exhaustion from the trial of the scar, immediately moved from the rock. He found the chief's eyes. "They won't stop, Chief. They'll flank you. They're looking for the spring. They need the water to keep chasing the pie," Jake advised, his desert knowledge overriding his fear. "I know their tactics. Give me back my Colt. I'll take the high ridge and draw their fire. I fight for the land, not the railroad." Mountain Hand hesitated, his massive hand gripping his war club. Trusting the white man who might be a spy was a gamble, but the bounty hunters were a known, immediate danger to his people. He nodded to the warrior holding Jake's Colt 45. "You have proven your courage against the sun, Vaquero. Now prove your loyalty with your gun. If you betray us, my warriors will find you first." Jake grabbed his Colt, feeling the familiar heavy comfort of the pearl handle. He checked the cylinder, 6 rounds, all he had. He moved with practiced urgency, scrambling up a narrow, hidden goat path toward the highest canyon rim, his movements silent and quick. The bounty hunters were getting closer, their movements marked by the occasional clatter of gear against rock. From his vantage point, Jake saw them, 5 heavily armed men, led by a ruthless killer named Silas "Sharp" Reed, easily recognizable by his distinctive fringed leather coat and the scope on his Sharp's rifle. They were moving toward the spring, aiming to trap the pie at their water source. Jake raised his Colt .45, sighting down the barrel. He wouldn't shoot to kill. That wasn't the code he was fighting for. He fired one shot, aiming high, the bullet striking the canyon wall with a sharp whiz and kicking up dust, a clear signal of his position and a deliberate draw of their attention. "You're on sacred ground, partners. Turn around and ride out. There ain't no bounty worth the price of this canyon," Jake shouted, his voice echoing fiercely through the narrow pass. Silas Reed and his men immediately turned their attention toward the sound. Reed, seeing the solitary figure, smirked and raised his Sharp's rifle. He didn't fire at Jake, however. Instead, he fired a single calculated shot into the dust near the spring, followed by a shouted message. "We ain't leaving empty-handed, Vaquero. We'll let the pie keep their chief, but we're taking the white woman we saw with their raiding party. Send her out or we start killing." Jake froze. The second peril had not only arrived, but had also introduced a shocking, unknown element, a captive white woman among the tribe. The bounty hunter's demand, the threat to take the white woman, sent a wave of cold realization through Jake. It wasn't just a simple bounty. The presence of a white woman suggested a deeper, more complex conflict. Her being held by the tribe might be the very reason the railroad syndicate wanted the pie wiped out, using the classic hostage narrative as justification. Jake dropped to a crouch, reloading his Colt with tense, methodical movements. He shouted back, his voice strained, "There ain't no woman here, Sharp, just me and the pie. Don't lie, partner, we saw her trail. They took her from the last wagon train. Send her out, or the whole canyon runs red." Reed's voice was sharp, brutal, echoing the terror of a man ready to kill. Mountain Hand, hidden below, was now faced with an agonizing moral choice. He could deny the woman's presence, risking a devastating, unnecessary fight, or reveal her, risking the white man's judgment. He looked up at Jake. "We found the woman, Vaquero. She was abandoned, left to die of thirst by her own people. She is wounded but safe. She is under the protection of the pie. She is not a prisoner." Jake knew he had to confirm the truth and protect the tribe's honor. He lowered his voice. "Chief, I need to see her. I need to know the truth of her capture. If she's a hostage, I can't protect this tribe. If she's a refugee, I'll die defending her." Mountain Hand, recognizing the fundamental importance of this truth, gave a sharp hand signal to a warrior. A moment later, a fragile, pale woman was led out from a small cave. She was wearing simple, torn pioneer clothes and had a bandaged arm, but her eyes, though exhausted, held a spark of defiant strength. "I ran from them. They murdered my husband for his claim. The pie saved me." The woman, Elara, screamed up at Jake, her voice desperate. "They're lying. They want the gold claim, not me." Jake felt the last of his internal conflict snap into focus. The tribe was telling the truth. The bounty hunters were the real enemy, lying to create chaos and claim the woman's rightful property. "They're lying, Chief. They're using her to force you out. This is a land grab. We fight." Jake fired a calculated shot from his Colt, not at Reed, but at the ridge directly above the bounty hunter, sending a shower of rock and dust down onto him, disrupting his aim. The fight was on, a desperate three-way battle for justice and land. The bounty hunters returned fire with a vengeance, their Winchesters cracking sharply, bullets ricocheting off the canyon walls. Jake, outnumbered and outgunned, realized he couldn't hold the high ground alone. Just as a bullet ripped through the brim of his hat, he heard a new, terrifying sound. The distant, coordinated drumming of a massive Apache war party. The entire tribe was coming, drawn by the gunshots. But the drums also signaled something else, the nearby U.S. Cavalry would hear the drums, and they would be forced to ride out, believing a full-scale uprising was underway, setting the stage for a three-way deadly confrontation. The thunderous, coordinated drumming of the main PI force was a double-edged sword. It terrified the bounty hunters, who immediately sought full cover, but it guaranteed the arrival of the U.S. cavalry, who would interpret the tribal signal as an act of war. The atmosphere became impossibly tense, a clock ticking down to massive violence. Jake scrambled lower on the ridge, his breath ragged. He shouted down to Mountain Hand, "Chief, the drums will bring the bluecoats. They'll see an uprising. We need to stop this now." Mountain Hand, resolute but grim, knew the danger. He raised his obsidian war club high, signaling a momentary ceasefire to his forward warriors. "I know the law of the white man, Vaquero. They only respect single combat. I will challenge the leader. It is the only way to stop the fire." The chief walked into the open, stepping away from the cover of the rocks, his massive figure stark against the canyon wall. He spoke a loud, resonant command that carried up the ridge. Silas Reed, the bounty hunter, slowly rose from his cover, his rifle aimed. "I challenge you, sharpshooter. I challenge you to the duel of the earth. One-on-one, with the weapons of the land. No metal, no fire." Mountain Hand roared, tossing his war club to the ground. "We fight for the truth of the woman and the sacredness of the land." Reed, seeing a chance to eliminate the feared chief without a full battle, accepted. "Deal! You fight with your stone club, I fight with my knife. Let's settle this savage." Jake knew this was a mistake. Reed was a brutal fighter, but he had a deeper plan. "Chief, he won't fight fair. He's a liar." Mountain Hand ignored him, his eyes fixed on Reed. The warriors, honoring the tradition, formed a silent circle around the two men. Reed descended the ridge, armed with a long, gleaming bowie knife. Mountain Hand picked up his war club. The air was static, pregnant with the expectation of brutal ritual violence. The duel began. It was a terrifying, realistic struggle. No fancy gunplay, just the heavy thud of the club meeting the air and the sharp metallic scrape of the knife. Mountain Hand, relying on sheer power and reach, cornered Reed. Just as the chief prepared to land a final crushing blow, Reed revealed his true treachery. Reed, feigning surrender, threw a handful of fine sand into Mountain Hand's eyes, blinding the giant. As the chief roared in pain, Reed plunged his bowie knife deep into the chief's side. The chief staggered back, blood blooming instantly on his bare chest. Reed then grabbed his own rifle, shouted a command to his men, "Kill the chief! Go for the white woman!" and aimed his sharps rifle at the wounded Mountain Hand's head. The duel had ended in treachery, and the final bloody confrontation was seconds away, just as the distant, furious bugle call of the U.S. cavalry echoed through the mountains. The bugle call of the cavalry, combined with the chief's agonizing cry, was the climax of the canyon's tension. The sound signaled the official military arrival, turning a duel into a possible war crime. Reed's treachery had shattered the code of honor, and he was seconds from killing the PI chief. Jake, watching from the ridge, knew his moment had come. He couldn't kill Reed. The moral scar of his past demanded non-lethal action, even now, but he had to stop the shot. He lowered his Colt 45, aiming not at Reed, but at the Sharps rifle in his hands. With a lightning-fast final act of speed, Jake fired. The single Colt 45 round struck the wooden stock of the Sharps rifle, shattering it instantly and sending the barrel flying. Reed roared in pain and surprise, his hands stinging from the impact. The Pi warriors, enraged by the attack on their chief, immediately surged forward, surrounding Reed and his men. The bounty hunters, seeing the wave of vengeful warriors and hearing the approaching cavalry, broke and ran, scrambling up the canyon walls, abandoning their wounded leader. The Pi secured Reed, wounded and captured, his lies finally laid bare. Jake descended the ridge, rushing to the chief's side. Mountain Hand was bleeding heavily but conscious. Ilara, the woman, quickly rushed to his aid, using her pioneer knowledge to staunch the wound. The cavalry, led by a stern captain, rode into the canyon moments later. They saw the scene. The heavily armed Pi tribe, the white woman attending to the wounded chief, and the captured, defeated bounty hunter leader, Silas Reed. The captain surveyed the scene, then looked at the white man with the smoking gun, Jake Harper. What in the blazes happened here, Vaquero? Are these hostiles or allies? And who is this wounded man? This man, Jake said, pointing to Reed, is a liar and a hired killer working for the railroad syndicate. They tried to murder the chief to start a war and steal this woman's claim. The chief challenged him to a ritual duel to stop the violence. He cheated. I stopped him. Jake then pointed to Ilara. She's a refugee, Captain. The Pi saved her life. Ilara stepped forward, holding the chief's wound. The Pi are honorable, Captain. These men are criminals. They tried to murder me and the chief. Faced with the evidence of the wounded chief and the terrified but coherent white woman, the captain, a man of simple frontier justice, made his decision. He ordered Reed arrested, recognizing the deeper political maneuvering. We'll take the prisoner and the woman back to the fort. The Pi are to be left in peace. The territorial governor will deal with the railroad's lies. The captain looked at Jake. You saved a lot of lives today, Harper. You rode into a war and left behind the truth. You're free to go. Jake watched the cavalry ride out, the defeated bounty hunter in tow. He turned back to the Pi. Mountain Hand looked at him, his face a mask of pain and profound gratitude. You risked your life for my honor, Stoneheart Guide, the chief whispered, using the name of respect. You did not kill with your speed. You saved life. Your choice honored our code. The land is indebted to your spirit. Jake looked at the canyon, no longer a trap, but a sanctuary. He had come seeking isolation, but found belonging. He had come carrying a scar of blood, but left with the indelible mark of honor. He had survived the ritual duel by refusing to fight, proving that sometimes the greatest courage lay not in the bullet, but in the moral truth. The end.